Yowzers, all kinds of stuff going on. Sunspots, Degrade, geomagnetism, a heliospheric current sheet polarity boundary crossing. NOAA forecasts geomagnetic storms and unrest. It all has to do with weather coming from space. All your weather comes from space, folks. If you want to read more about our mission, head to smashomash.com/forum/mission. Here's the sun from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Again, sunspots have degraded here, and there have been coronal mass ejections, one of which calculated by NOAA to be a glancing blow for Earth. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but let's take a look at what's going on here from Lagrangian point 5, the location of stereo A, from which the Earth would be off to your right. So now, let me just explain something real quick. And thanks to everybody for finding our channel, realizing that it exists. Science is a rabbit hole. And often in science, we ask for answers to questions. Questions of why certain things are happening in nature, right? And often, we don't get the answers to those questions. We get the answers to other questions and instead end up with a list of additional questions, and indeed answers to questions that we didn't even ask. It's part of what's going on with our channel. We didn't expect to be able to forecast coronal mass ejections. We just realized that we are forecasting coronal mass ejections, and so now we're doing it. So a little bit of a side note on that also. We only forecast coronal mass ejections in this area. And yes, I did put it beyond the pole, because a coronal mass ejection happening right here at the pole can indeed strike Earth. So that's the reason why we're only forecasting them in those areas. We don't forecast them on this side of the sun, only on this side of the sun, as those are the only geo-effective coronal mass ejections. We could forecast them on the opposite side of the sun. We just choose not to because there's plenty other work to do. This is Mercury, by the way, on the LASCO C2, on the stereo A coronagraph. And let's take a look at Lagrangian point 1 to get better telemetry on the trajectory of that coronal mass ejection. So here's this coronal mass ejection here, and certainly most of the ejecta will miss Earth to the west. You can clearly see here this large bubble-like structure coming out. I see just this side of zero ejecta on this side of the obscuration disk here. So I don't wholly agree with NOAA's forecast there, but let's move on to look at some more imagery of the closest star. We're going to zoom in here a little bit now that you can see the time and date stamps. We'll zoom in on the equatorial region to show you all of the active areas here. There were 6 sunspot groups named. Anyway, there's some great imagery in 94 angstroms from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And there's another sunspot that's risen here, so we may end up with 7 named sunspot groups today. We'll get to it at the end of the video with some high-res imagery. So here's the colorized magnetogram scenario, and check out all the activity here on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Largely degradation happened, though, so there are some sunspots here that are still significant. Let's show the intensity gram. Nice. All right, so sunspot 2842 has degraded quite a bit. It is approaching the limit. Could still produce significant flares. This sunspot down here is looking pretty stable. This one here right in the Earth-facing zone here has degraded a little bit. This one up here is pretty stable. It may be an alpha class now. It looks like it may have lost some trailing umbrae. This one down here has degraded. It looks like it's now alpha class. And this one rising over here may still have some surprises for us. So we'll save that till the end of the video. Here's a diagram of the solar system. We're approaching a full moon. I believe it's on the 24th. There's where things will be in 1 week on July 29th. Keep in mind, this diagram is not to scale. 10.7 centimeter radial flux has jumped up to 94, and expect that to subside a little bit with all the degradation of sunspots unless we see some more activity rise. Here's the one-year chart. Solon.info needs to update that as it's actually up here, not at 87. So here's the NOAA forecast from the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. NOAA expecting geomagnetic unrest to begin tomorrow night between 15 and 1800 Universal Time, and continuing on with geomagnetic unrest and a brief period of geomagnetic storm here for about 6 hours, right around midnight Universal Time tomorrow night, and then subsiding around midday Universal Time on the 24th. So that's the forecast. That's the glancing blow calculated by NOAA. And let's check out the earthquake drought. See all those red bars? Those are 7 magnitude earthquakes. And we're having a drought. So we've got high levels of seismicity right now. We saw a 6.7 strike Panama. We'll get to it in a minute. I just wanted to note that the 7 magnitude earthquake drought continues. We got to draw a line somewhere. And the line in this case is at 7 magnitude quake. So here's the largest quake of the past 24, this 6.7 here south of Panama. Not sure if that caused any tsunamis. Let's check. And you may be pleased to know that at the time we made this video, there were no tsunami warnings, watches, advisories, or threats. Originally reported as a 7 magnitude quake, it's been downgraded to a 6.7. And let's continue on with the rest of the list. So quite a swarm of quakes here around Southern California and around the Nevada border. Also some off the coast of California, like this 4.4 off the coast of Petrolia, one of the hot spots of seismicity around the U.S. Also a deep quake at the Kermadec Islands at over 500 kilometers. Papua New Guinea saw a 6.0 magnitude quake, so a big uptick in seismicity here. Keep in mind, those 6 magnitude quakes could be foreshocks. So please have an earthquake plan if you are in an earthquake-prone zone. Be an asset, not a liability, in the event of a disaster. Your neighbors will need you, and the government will not be there to save you, most likely. Another deep quake here, a 4.3 at Fiji at over 560 kilometers estimated depth. A deep quake at Chile, a 4.9 at 105 kilometers. A deep quake at Colombia, a 4.2 at 141 kilometers. Indonesia also saw a 5.2, and there's that 6.7 that came in late in the day yesterday, south of Panama at 21:15 Universal Time. If we miss anything on the earthquake list, just leave us a comment. Leave us a comment anyway. Nicaragua also saw a 5.3 magnitude quake. Small swarm in the Caribbean as well. Vanuatu saw a 5.5. And again, a bunch of quakes around California there. We're not going to report on them. They are not a large enough magnitude to make our list. Uptick in volcanic activity as well, including a new volcano I've never heard of on the list. Let's check it out. Karimsky, exploding on the Kamchatka Peninsula, now producing a 12,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Subanosejima, flight level unknown. Please do not fly your hang glider over Subanosejima. There could be a volcanic ash plume there above the caldera. Luatolo, exploding 6,000-foot ash plume there. And Sirung on Pantar Island, Indonesia, produced a phreatic or hydrothermal eruption. 6,000-foot plume of grayish ash and gas and dust. Volcanic alert level raised to 2. Again, that's Sirung, the Indonesian volcano on Pantar Island. Don't get your Pantars in a bunch. Dakono's also exploding. Flight level 070. It's producing a 7,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Fuego on Guatemala. No volcanic ash clouds observed. Doesn't mean it's not erupting. Please do not square dance the caldera. Sabancaya exploding. 23,000-foot ash plume produced there through its intermittent emissions. And Nevados de Chilean also exploding. 13,000-foot ash plume. Above it is a reminder to not pole vault the caldera. Please don't pole vault the caldera. People do stupid things. And there are stupid channels on YouTube, and there are stupid people on YouTube. However, there are no stupid questions. Remember, folks, ignorance is the key to all. Ignorance is the root of all knowledge. So there are no stupid questions, but there are stupid people. Perhaps help them out by picking up some merch from us. You can find the links at smashamash.com. Smashamash.org will redirect you. And please don't pole vault the caldera. It could be unfortunate. So we actually didn't see any major solar flares here, which was surprising. And we still could see some. There are still plenty of sunspots around the limb of the sun to produce major flares. The solar flare watch remains in effect. And don't be surprised to see major flares and additional coronal mass ejections as a result of those, or associated with those, I'll say, because I don't want to imply causality when there is no causality. That's the 3-day chart from the GOES X-ray flux. It's the GOES 16 sun-facing suite of instruments measuring X-rays. Solar flare watch continues. Proton flux remains flatlined, as none of the ejecta has shown up in a major way. It's not what we'd call a proton event, barely even any spikes there at all on the proton flux. GOES magnetometer is showing some extreme spikes here over the past 3 days. And as we forecasted yesterday, Earth has entered into a South Pole current sheet. That's part of what you're seeing here. And for you new viewers, the N's and M's are noon and midnight local time for the GOES 16. Now, Earth is now in a South Pole current sheet, or it's about to be in a South Pole current sheet. It could be in a moment of indecision. And we forecasted this yesterday because, well, I'm able to forecast the magnetic environment here based on a lot of different variables that I won't explain in this daily space weather video. This top view ecliptic plane field plot is showing you the polarity of the heliospheric current sheet, North Pole in green, South Pole in red. Keep in mind the data was 1 hour and 46 minutes old when I recorded the video. And let's move on here as we've got lots more stuff to cover. Here's the 3D line of sight visualization of the same data. It also shows you the solar magnetogram. And you can see the B field suddenly shifting there as the South Pole current sheet approaches. How I forecasted it, I'll just have to leave that for another video, perhaps a cosmology segment. Here's a line of sight coronal hole plot showing North Pole oriented coronal holes in green, south ones in red. And we've got an equatorial coronal hole right over here. You can see this red area reaching beyond the equator. It's part of the solar cycle 25 solar polar field reversal process happening before your very eyes there. This imagery also shows you the sun's B field in blue. This is one of the most important data sets that we have regarding cycle progression and solar activity in general. That sudden shift of the B field is part of cycle 25's solar polar field progression. And transequatorial coronal holes are the most geo-effective ones, so lots of upticks here happening all at once. Solar flare watch is still in effect, as we've said. Here's the solar flare monitor on the Integrated Space Weather Analysis Center. You can check that out yourself if you like. It's literally the first tab on the home page. KP index now at 4 here, so we're in geomagnetic unrest conditions already. And it's because of the heliospheric current sheet polarity boundary crossing. So that's going to subside rather quickly here. Don't expect this to continue on for extended periods. Let's take a look at the real-time solar wind, which contains some error bars. Error bars, rather, not arrow bars. That's a part on my time trial bike. All right, so first of all, we saw the BTBZ diverge a lot. So we're seeing strong fields, that's the BT, and we're seeing negative BZ. Negative BZ is associated with stronger geomagnetism. It has to do with the polarity of the sun's interaction with the Earth. And this negative BZ is associated with all kinds of geomagnetism. So current conditions here are reportable here. Its total field is 7 nanotesla. And the BZ is -7, so it's highly South Pole oriented magnetism there from the sun. Phi angle also shifted around that period, not surprising that the plasma would be affected by a change in the magnetic fields. And here's the solar wind density, 6.23 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed now subsiding from a high-speed coronal hole wind stream down to 425 kilometers per second. And all these yellow areas down here, those are error bars. I don't really want to talk about it. We don't want the video to be too long. So next, looking at geospace magnetosphere movies, and we're showing the velocity and the pressure and the density today. So we've got these high velocity zones out there, and that's basically what happens when the Earth goes through a neutral zone here. In between heliospheric current sheets, we see higher velocity regions happening as more of the solar plasma gets ejected back out into space, or the earthly plasma, you could say, as most of the material in Earth's geospace is actually earthly in origin. So there's the velocity, next the density, and we'll just bring that back. Should be 4 hours of data. And the density is fairly uneventful here. As these changes to the geospace are not induced by the solar wind itself, but by the magnetism. And we'll also show the pressure as we do most days. All of these data sets courtesy University of Michigan. It's the Space Weather Modeling Framework. And if you want to read about that, just click on details down on this page. You can read all about the Space Weather Modeling Framework. It's got a lot of variables, and it's got well-written code. So here's the magnetohydrodynamic pressure in nanopascals. And you can see some oddities to the shape of the geospace right now, and that has to do with the heliospheric current sheet boundary crossing. As Earth moves into a south pole current sheet, we caught it right at the moment. A significant enough moment to cause geomagnetic unrest. So next, looking at ground magnetic perturbations here, and we see lots of them. And we see some auroras sparked from this geomagnetic unrest period as well. So here's the polar view. We don't always show this one. We usually only show this one during periods of activity. And quite a bit of activity there. Changes to the Earth B field, otherwise known as geospace delta B. And you can see at the end of the movie there, some significant ground magnetic perturbations. Here's the global view. Let's just bring this back. And we're going to show you the auroral forecast as well here, right after this. Significant perturbations here south of the Atlantic Ocean once again. We've also got electron anomalies, which we'll get to. Some pulses coming out of the area here around the Western Pacific, places like Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, etc., seeing some magnetic pulses as well. And here's your aurora forecast. And we can expect to see some auroras from this. Perhaps we'll see some great photographs tomorrow. And if you've got imagery of auroras, hit us up on Instagram or something like that. Perhaps join our Discord channel. There's a permanent invite link at smAsho.com to our Discord channel. You need an invite, and the permanent link is there. So post on our Discord channel, perhaps. Especially if you've got imagery of auroras, and there you can see some intensification of the auroras. And thanks to our new subscribers over at youtube.com/smAshomash. Check all of our videos out. We do lots more than space weather and stuff. There's a lot of playlists. youtube.com/smAshomash/playlists. Thanks again to our new subscribers. And if you're new to the channel, please press like and subscribe. Press share. The algorithms dislike us. Tell your friends and foes about the channel. And let us know in the comments what you'd like us to do for our upcoming 2,000 subscriber special. Yesterday's live stream was demonetized, and now only our patrons have a link. Welcome to the Neo Renaissance, by the way. Visit smAshomash.org, which will redirect you here to smAshomash.com. And maybe check out our featured product, which you can find at the smAsho merch link. It's the Blaze Orange Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera shirt. So if you click on smAsho merch, it'll send you to this shop. If you click on View All Products, by the way, you can get a Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera shower curtain, throw pillow, and all kinds of other stuff. And the classic t-shirt comes in a variety of colors. Nothing says "Don't run me over or shoot me" like Blaze Orange. We like to wear Blaze Orange while riding our mountain bikes in the fall around Pennsylvania. Again, nothing says don't run me over or shoot me like Blaze Orange Clothing. And another reminder, please do not pole vault the caldera. We're also on BitChute. There's exclusive content. Check out our 500 subscriber special there. And we regularly stream live to Twitch. We didn't do it today. Too much to cover. We've also did a cosmology segment today, which will premiere after the Daily Space Weather video. Make sure you check that out. Full of exciting stories once again. And check out our other cosmology segments as well at youtube.com/smashamash/playlists. There are over 200 cosmology segments in there. Thanks again to our patrons. Next, we'll talk about the electrons surrounding planet Earth, the relativistic ones. They're able to charge up satellites, and it's actually happening right now. We've got some significant charging hazards. This could cause things like communications breakdowns. It's probably not the Russians or the Chinese. It's probably weather from space. So here you can see some charging hazards here over the Western Pacific, Mexico, Central America, etc., about to move into the North Central Pacific. Some surface charging hazards happening there could cause satellite errors, or what we call a CCD bakeout. What's a CCD bakeout? That's when the charge couple device shuts down to make sure that it's not taking damage because of weather from space. Here's the one-year chart of the electron flux from Solon.info. Here's a 3-day chart. And don't be surprised to see this rise up into warning levels today. Here's the NOAA forecast for electron flux. So we're not really expecting to see electron warnings here, and this is a little bit tough to forecast. But in any case, I'll go out on a limb and say I think we're going to get into warning levels here. In other words, over 1,000 pulse flux units. Anyway, there's the forecast model. The green boxes are the forecast. The yellow diamonds are the observation. Here's a diagram of Earth Van Allen belts to put things in perspective. And here's some electron anomalies happening once again. So we paused it right at this moment here, which is at 1440 yesterday, where we see some electron anomalies here south of the Indian Ocean and south of Africa. So let's let this play all the way through here. This is the entire air column up to where your potential GPS satellite is located. The electron density. And that little area down there, that's basically like an additional Van Allen belt. It gives us insight into the Earth's geomagnetism, as electrons are only about 1/1800th the mass of a proton. Electrons move first. And anyway, there's a great visualization of some anomalies south of the Indian Ocean. The total electron content forecast. Here's another diagram of the atmosphere. It's showing you where the F flare is located at 300 kilometers of altitude. Feel free to pause the video. It also shows you thermosphere temperature and electromagnetic radiation penetration. Here's the ionosphere. It's the F flare. Again, one slice here at about 300 kilometers of altitude. We're seeing some anomalies once again here around South America, especially west of it. Some surprisingly high vibrational regions there in the South Central Pacific especially. And we've been noting some anomalies in the ionosphere for the past couple of weeks. Anyway, let's bring up the latest image. That's from 9:15 Universal Time. Things looking pretty normal at the moment. And by the way, we also did a meteorology segment today. Make sure you check that out. We've been doing many of them. It's another playlist at youtube.com/smashamash/playlists. And if you're watching the videos any place besides on YouTube, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. You're missing like 80% of our content. All right, let's do bonus features. Here's the ground-based solar observatory, part of the National Sunspot Observatory, part of the Gong 2 network. It's hydrogen alpha imagery from Lermonth, Australia. And check out all the filaments and active regions on the Earth-facing portion of the disk. A sudden uptick here in solar activity. Here's more. But first, let's thank our patrons, the true source of funding for the content, patreon.com/smashamash if you want all kinds of early alerts and cosmology information that nobody else gets to see. Patreon.com/smashamash. Thanks again, patrons, for being the executive, assistant, and associate producers of the channel. It's why we give you all the information first. And there'll be all kinds of upcoming opportunities for patrons to do all sorts of things that nobody else gets the privilege to do on the channel. Patreon.com/smAshomash. Please consider becoming a patron. And here's the latest intensitygram. We're going to check out all the regions. That's got the potential for significant solar flares. That's got the potential for significant solar flares. That, not so much. That's alpha class. Not so much from this one either. It's alpha class. This has got significant possibility for large solar flares. So quite a few. It looks like 5 named groups there we're going to see today. Could be 6. Let's just make sure that's the latest imagery. We'll show you close-ups of all the magnetic fields. Take a trip around the solar disk here in colorized magnetogram. Take a little trip, take a little trip, take a little trip in magnetogram. And the colorized magnetogram is one of the best things to show all the details of what's going on with all the activity on El Sol. Anyway, there's that. There's the intensitygram once again. Feel free to pause the video. Here's the NASA GOES 16 SUVI thematic map. Massive filaments between Earth and Sun. Keep in mind there is still a possibility for additional coronal mass ejections. We don't have a watch or a warning in effect right now. Well, I'll say this. Coronal mass ejection watch, not warning in effect. Solar flare watch in effect. And a solar flare can cause a coronal mass ejection to happen with basically no warning. That's the NASA GOES 16 SUVI thematic map. It's almost like cheating. It might not be pretty, but it shows you all of the features that would be relevant. And today we'll close out the video in 304 angstroms from the Solar Dynamics Observatory, ionized helium. It's the best wavelength for showing filaments, especially when looking at the sun's disk. It's pretty bright. This is UV spectra, by the way, 304 angstroms ionized helium. And we'll zoom in a little bit to show a little bit closer up data here on all the active regions. Congratulations once again on finding our channel. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to stare at the sun, attempt to understand the physics, don't drink, and if you do, don't drive. Seriously, don't drive. I don't care if you drink, just don't drive. For real. And may that solar wind be at your back. Daily Space Weather brought to you by Smash News Network. Least busted, name in news.